Thank you, John, and thank you all of Grenada Forum. You folks really represent what I fantasize will happen all across this great land, as a matter of fact, around the world. You've heard a number of speakers in the past that have enlightened you on a variety of subjects. The one tonight, this is very apropos that it be Halloween. This is probably the worst story you've ever heard. I spent a great deal of time trying to not want to believe this. But unfortunately, the evidence is that support not only Kathy O'Brien's story, and the other evidence is that Senator John DeCamp from the Nebraska cover-up, Franklin cover-up as it's known, support what you're going to be hearing tonight. In addition to that, there has been a tremendous amount of information that has surfaced over the past really 3 years that has come from people who have been on the front lines. Not only therapists, but we have got generals and colonels from all branches of the military and members of intelligence that have provided us with literally tons of documentation, not only supporting Kathy's story, but thousands of others just like her. Kathy O'Brien is not unique. I wish she were, because if she were, I would not be in front of you right tonight, because it would mean that this problem went no further. Unfortunately, that is not the case. What has happened to Kathy O'Brien is happening all around the world, and it's happening in daycare centers, it's happening in homes, and not homes of Appalachian people who lack or lack any education or any written language skills, who have been practicing incest for years. This is happening as a result of a very coordinated effort that has come out of the intelligence communities, again, from around the world. My role in all of this is relatively simple, but nevertheless complex. I'm going to give you all a background tonight of about a few minutes of MK Ultra information, and I request that you all write some questions down for us. We cannot take verbals. We will take written questions. You don't have to sign them or put your name down there, and we'll attempt to answer as many as possible. Please make the questions relevant to the subject matter, because I can't, nor can Kathy, discuss what we may surmise are other victims, other than the ones that are the most obvious ones, like Timothy McVeigh. And again, it is not our experience. We have no proof. We only have Mr. McVeigh's admissions and some other information that would support it. But that's an example of our limits. We prefer to answer any and all questions individually, standing up in front of you, because there is no such thing as a bad question. We spent about 5.5 years on the lecture circuit with law enforcement and mental health. Now, that was done to protect us. It was also done to ferret out as much information as we could regarding other survivors, as well as ferreting out information through law enforcement, or I should say cooperative law enforcement, who were like you all. They're free thinkers, and they knew something was going on, but they didn't understand it. I will attempt to give you as much background on myself so that you'll have some understanding of how I was able to do what we've accomplished, Kathy and I. But our main concern, of course, remains the same focus, and that is to get this information out to the populace of this country and all the other countries that are affected, and we don't know many that aren't, and also to affect Kathy O'Brien's institutionalized daughter, Kelly, who, by the way, went into an institution when she was 8 years old, right after I rescued them, and she remains in that institution or an institutionalized setting to this day. I don't know how many of you all can imagine being a child and being raised in a mental institution. But I can assure you it is not a pretty sight, even though Kelly has not been mistreated as she had been prior to going into the institution. External control of the mind is not something new. It's thousands of years old. It's recorded in caves. It's recorded the exact formula for trauma-based mind control in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Adolf Hitler was particularly interested in mind control, and he assigned his right-hand man, Heinrich Himmler, to do some research, particularly on the families of Northern European multi-generational, sexually abused, psychologically abused, physically abused children. You see, I'm sure each of us understands, those of us that read the Bible and understand its literal interpretation about the sins of the father, understand what multi-generational abuse means. In this case, multi-generational abuse, and that begins, by the way, at birth, involves horrendous sexual and psychological and physical abuse that is put on these children by their caregivers. Well, Adolf Hitler knew that these people who are abused become very, very receptive to external control of their mind. They also develop some incredible abilities, like 44 times visual acuity. Now, I know that it doesn't take a rocket scientist, pardon the pun, to figure out how we could use somebody with 44 times the average person's visual acuity. It's called special forces. Special forces individuals are screened very carefully. Now, back when I was working for the Defense Department in a project known as MK Ultra, which was the exact project that Adolf Hitler assigned Himmler to do on multi-generationally abused children, I saw nothing of what Kathy O'Brien is reporting. I saw no abuse. What I saw in the prison systems and in the mental institutions were people who had a chance to recover their lives and their mind. I saw things that were very benevolent, and I really and truly believe the information that I was seeing would eventually reduce our prison and our mental institution populations dramatically, because I saw true rehabilitation occur without the use of trauma. Well, I was sworn to secrecy on the things that I witnessed, on the equipment that was developed, and I can assure you that in 1967, all the way up through 1973, when I was involved in this research as a Defense Department subcontractor, the equipment that I saw then was 25 to 30 years ahead of anything known on this planet in the private sector. I don't know if I was even seeing a portion of what was actually available. I don't know if what I was witnessing represented even a small percentage of what was actually occurring. But I was put into that job after months and months and months of psychological examinations because they knew I could keep a secret. I was given a Defense Department clearance. I knew about the Heinrich Himmler studies for Adolf Hitler, and I knew that Adolf Hitler wanted to develop some very serious people to put in places to control various regions in what he called, and George Bush called, and Nero called, the New World Order. You see, Adolf Hitler was not the first, nor was George Bush, to fantasize about this hideous idea of totalitarian government enslaving an entire globe's through mind manipulation. Now, mind manipulation comes in a lot of forms. You folks in this room are not falling into one big, huge trap, and that is information control. And I, again, thank the Grenada Forum for bringing Kathy and I in to impart this message, because we need your support. This book is not distributed through bookstores for the most part. The few bookstores that do handle it directly with us. To guard the integrity of the book so that it would go totally uncensored, we published it ourselves the first time. We now have an opportunity before us because many of the people Kathy has mentioned in the book have been indicted for a variety of reasons, or are facing indictments, or have fled their respective countries, or stepped down from power. For one simple reason, corruption that they could not cover up. Now, the corruption that we're talking about here goes beyond, I hope, most of you all's limits of experience. It certainly went beyond mine. I had a household that was this is totally alien to. But what Adolf Hitler began in his adamant research on, he had the largest number of human subjects from which to work and do his horror on. And it was even accepted by most of the people in his country that these prisoners of war were indeed to be subjected to anything that he chose that would better his country. Well, MK Ultra took on the same scientist, because in 1947, when the National Security Act was formed, there was a project that was developed called Project Paperclip. There was a few airlines at that time that were cranked up. Capital International Airlines was one of those airlines. I was vice president of Capital Airlines for a period of time. Capital International Airlines. This is very similar to the hat that they wore. By the way, you realize that if we could get these guys to all wear a hat, force them into a uniform, our problems are over. I told Kathy, I said, I don't know how to introduce this information. I said, do we come out here and say that we're the first and second oldest professions? All right, I want to see who laughed. Well, Kathy O'Brien certainly is a remarkable person, but I can assure you the prognosis for recovery of someone who has been horribly abused before age 5, before the brain is fully formed, the recovery I should say the level of recovery is very good. These people can lead normal, productive lives, even though they've experienced, in most cases, a lifetime of horrific abuse. That was the thing that surprised me the most. Now, there are a lot of survivors out there. There are a lot of survivors in various levels of recovery. Kathy is, again, the only one that we know of that is vocal, that has written a book, that's been validated, and we haven't been locked up. Now, I want everybody in this room to understand that neither Kathy or I are suicidal. And we just came back from Arkansas, and I want to tell you, Kathy and I were invited over there to spend 4 days with the investigators because they had found one chapter of her book they were actually able to validate. I said, well, give it to me in print. And they said, we can't do that. And I said, well, okay. Can I use this recording? I was only joking. They patted me down before I went in. But no, these people are what I consider friends of yours and mine. Now, if there are any CIA operatives in this room, you don't have to hold up your hand. But I'll tell you where I'm staying, and I want you to come see me alone. Particularly if you're trying to disrupt what we're doing. Because this information that Adolf Hitler was developing, we developed through Project Paperclip. Project Paperclip was the importation of Nazi and fascist scientists into this country after World War II that saturated our universities, saturated our Fortune 500 corporations, saturated NASA. It built NASA. And it has infiltrated every aspect of society with its filth. Filth in child pornography, filth in blood rituals and hideous religious beliefs that involve human sacrifice, anything to traumatize the mind. Some of these, I'm approached by a number of avid researchers that say, well, this is Satan behind it. Well, I want to tell you, these are people behind it, because I worked for the airline that brought these folks in. I had no idea what I was involved in, but I was recruited by Capital International Airways for the purposes that I could keep my mouth shut, and I worked on a need-to-know basis. Most operatives do not know who they're working for. There are over 86,000 of them in this country. Now you divide that by 50 and see what you come up with. This place is crawling with Big Brother. The KGB never had that many functioning operatives in high levels as we do in this country. 1984, George Orwell's book, really was a grim prophecy that has come true. Most people are saying that we got to stop this New World Order from taking over. It's already here. We're in it. Now let's understand who the players are and some of their tools. Mind control, whether it be trauma-based mind control to develop a totally robotic human being, is one type. Fortunately, it requires a great deal of horrible trauma that somebody's got to put on to these people, and it requires something more than just pushing a button on a console. There is equipment available now that we cannot protect ourselves from. And the amazing part about this equipment is it's available to everyone in this room. I don't quite understand the philosophy about making pain field generators and another device called an MDD-1, which uses a dual-coil electromagnetic pulse system, which affects our cerebral cortex. Stops logical thought. You couldn't balance your checkbook if one of these things were turned on, nor could you think to turn it off. Any more than Kathy O'Brien could have thought to have walked away from her victimization. This is not the beaten wife syndrome. This has nothing to do with an economic situation. This has something to do with robotic mind control. There are tons and tons of documents. Transformation of America is a book. Our book, an autobiography, Kathy's autobiography. I wrote the first 4 or 5 chapters to give you a briefing. But what this book contains is her life, that which we can validate. When this book was printed, we had over 27,000 documents. 27,000 documents fit into 5 file cabinets. We now have over 3 tons of paperwork. General Russell Bowen recently, I won't say fled, he doesn't like that, I'm sure. General Russell Bowen, who was one of the originators, and he's set up Operation Watchtower, the CIA's drug op. By the way, how many of you believe that the Central Intelligence Agency is the world's largest drug dealer? Can I see? Okay. So that makes our country the largest drug dealer on the face of the earth. And I resent this. I know now why the intelligence community did not want me for an officer. I know now why I was not privy to some of the stuff that I am now, unfortunately, very privy to. Because I think I'd have blown the whistle on them. There's a lot of whistleblowers out here now, and you folks are getting to hear them. You've been hearing them for years. This is one of the longest, oldest running groups that I'm aware of. I see a lot of familiar faces out there. And I see some people that, if they were in my position, would do exactly the same thing Kathy and I have had to do. I'm not into this. I was hired because I could keep secrets. This is against my programming. But I can assure you of this. It would be against God and everything that I am if I didn't get up here and talk and present Kathy O'Brien so that she can present her story. Kathy and I are really humbled by the number of people that we see that would have done the same thing. And people come up and say, oh, man, we really appreciate what you're doing. I said, well, thank you. And I appreciate hearing that. I even appreciate people when they say, this is hard to believe. I'm going to look at this book and I'm going to look at these documents. I tell them, please, please, please do this. Look in the back of our book and you'll get a thumbnail sketch of some books that you can get that are written by doctors, intelligence officers, and a number of other concerned professionals who present the elements of what Kathy experienced. In 1977, the 95th U.S. Congress had met because and this is good news, because I wouldn't have 1 ounce of credibility up here as far as MK Ultra goes if this didn't come out, and I couldn't even tell you the code name. But in 1977, the 95th U.S. Congress met to address an issue that a Dr. Ewing Cameron, the founder of the American Psychiatric Association, the APA, the lobby group in Washington that controls what doctors do for our heads when we run into trouble. APA, psychiatry is the youngest of all the healing arts, and it is the most primitive of them all because, yes, and I'm sure there's psychiatrists, may be psychiatrists in this room after that clapping. I'm sure they won't hold their hands up. But I know there are therapists in here. I've seen 2 already. These therapists know exactly what I'm talking about because the information that they're provided by their lobby has been carefully screened. Information on rehabilitating victims of mind control is not only scarce, but it's required some incredible efforts by some brave individuals who wound up getting sued because they could not violate the civil rights of the individual that they were actually treating. The situation with Kathy and I was very different. I wasn't a doctor. I wasn't a psychiatrist. I had no insurance or practice or license to protect. So I kept Kathy from reading newspapers. You see, when I rescued her on February the 8th, 1988, she didn't know her name, how old she was, or where she'd been. I'd seen this with people involved in espionage, and I immediately thought that Kathy had been an information courier, even though she was dressed like a prostitute, walked like a prostitute, and talked like somebody that was leading a Christian choir somewhere. And it was such a conflict, I couldn't quite grasp this contrast until I was given a great deal of information from some people involved in intelligence in this country and abroad. I was fed a treatment modality that ultimately would lead to putting Kathy O'Brien free again for the second time in her life. The first time was when she was born, and it stopped right there. Kathy O'Brien had been a victim of the most horrendous abuse system known to man. The type of mind control, again, that Adolf Hitler thought that he could use on certain individuals, putting them in positions of extraordinary power and having invisible strings, the master puppeteer, to their minds and what they said. I don't know if we have politicians like that now or not, because it seems like you don't have to put them under mind control. They'll do anything that corrupt members of Congress persuade them to do. I've known several corrupt congressmen that didn't have to be blackmailed with sex, that didn't have to be enticed with money or drugs. They just simply were corrupt. You see, a sociopath is a very outgoing individual. Leaders. Yeah, leaders. Yeah. Unfortunately, sociopaths have no conscience, no expression of soul. They do not relate to anyone else's pain except it gives them pleasure. MK Ultra was designed and had many, many sub-projects for developing the perfect soldier, the perfect espionage agent, things that I was told that would cover an area of our national security that no soldier and no diplomat could possibly cover. No one told me that we were using them as drug mules and prostitutes. No one told me that we were using them for breeders so that children could be provided sheiks, world leaders. No one told me that we were using them for money laundering operations. When I rescued Kathy and her daughter, the information about this is in the book. It took me a year to put Kathy back together, literally, with a whole lot of help and a whole lot of love. Other therapists don't have that latitude. They can't love their patients. They can't keep them away from telephones. They can't keep them away from newspapers and TVs. And they wind up getting contaminated because they're highly suggestible. They see an ad for fried chicken, they can smell it. Now, I dreamed as an ad man to be able to produce ads like that. I worked real hard just to get somebody to go, nice ad. But nobody ever drooled on any pages that I ever put out. And I used subliminal. I used a form of neurolinguistics. Those of you who do not know about NLP should learn. Tony Robbins is an advocate of NLP, and he teaches. As a matter of fact, he taught George Bush and he taught Bill Clinton. And there's nothing wrong with Tony Robbins. He's not a bad guy. He's a smart businessman. And any smart businessman these days knows the value of neurolinguistics, or the language of the unconscious. I always call it the language of the subconscious, and I'm getting outvoted by all the mental health people. They say, that's not right. Unconscious. Well, to me, it's the subconscious. But the language of the subconscious provided me the codes, keys, and triggers to unlock all the rest of the doors in Kathy's mind that pertain specifically to her abuse. It gave me information like bank account numbers first. And I found that rather unusual until I found out that most people who had worked around MK Ultra and knew anything about deprogramming, and by the way, it's nothing more. I'm nothing more than a hacker. Instead of hacking a hard drive computer, I'm hacking the hard drive up here. This job as a hacker provided me some incredible information on bank account numbers. And instead of going down and looting the bank accounts and having to hide for the rest of my natural life in luxury, I took them to the FBI and gave them to them. Not because I knew they were clean or dirty. It's because I didn't want them to kill me over it. I provided everything that's in this book over a period of 3.5 years to every state, federal, and local law enforcement agency that was directly involved with this case. And the names of over 1,000 agencies and people are in this book. I wanted to get this before Congress. I wanted to get it before Congress like happened in the 95th U.S. Congress in 1977, when the wife of a Canadian cabinet member had gone in to a mental hospital in Montreal where Dr. Ewan Cameron was practicing. I wonder why they say practicing. And she came out as a vegetable. Well, the cabinet member, I don't recall his name right now, he was just incensed on trying to find out what had happened to his wife. They put her through horrific electroshock tortures and every other conceivable torture, drugs, hypnosis. Unfortunately, many others were involved in Dr. Ewan Cameron, the founder of the APA's experiments. Some of those recovered ones, I'm in touch with 2 of them, and these people are highly functional and most likely will be doing the same thing we're doing. One of them will be in the very near future. I don't know of any in this country that have recovered to the point where Kathy O'Brien has, because no doctor can dedicate 16 to 18 hours a day, day in, day out, 7 days a week, and violate every civil right that they've got and get away with it legally. Nor can they have their patients legally go into the safes or safe of their handlers and pull out their diaries. Ooh. By the way, in one of the diaries, it's got Bill Clinton's home phone number. It's got Dick Thornburg on a coke deal for $20,000. And the list goes on. This is a small group, gang. I suppose, if you consider the population of the United States, it's so fractional, these bad guys that are in control of all of us, it's so fractional that we wonder what on earth could they be doing. People wonder how does Clinton survive all of these attacks against him? How did George Bush survive the attacks against him? Well, he didn't. He went out of office, but I don't believe anything changed. I believe the guy that he had for his replacement did exactly what he wanted to do, like start out with NAFTA and GATT. We're, as David Icke so eloquently said, a one-party system. There are ways to change that, and there are a number of people that are making some very positive efforts in that direction. But that's their job. My job and Kathy's job is to stand before groups like you, very nervous, because we're not nervous that we stand in front of you so much as we want to make sure that the information you get will excite you enough to where you'll go out and talk about it, or go out and investigate it and talk about it some more. That's all we want to do. We attempt to get our books out by the case, and they get real cheap when you buy a case of them. One box of books, 36 books, $252 if we deliver them. This book is information. It is truth, and it is truth that will set us free. I am absolutely intent on the idea that the information contained in this book will indeed reach the eyes of those who can see. And the information contained on this video that's being produced right now will reach the eyes of those that can hear and see truth, so that they will get out and begin to wonder why Sirhan had the same psychiatrist, Jolyon West, Lee Harvey Oswald, Timothy McVeigh. Now, boy, I'll tell you, this guy's real popular. He's right down here at UCLA. He was also the first person to call me on my unlisted, unpublished, fake name telephone out in the boonies outside of Anchorage, Alaska, after I rescued Kathy and her daughter. And a woman by the name of Margaret Singer, who may be a friend of one or two of y'all out there, but I don't miss a chance to bring out the fact that she was the one that sent another character in on us up there. I wasn't I wasn't connected well enough to be told not to do anything on my own. And at the time, I was absolutely out of my mind from hearing this stuff. I was suffering from what is known as post-traumatic stress disorder. I was shell-shocked after hearing what Kathy and Kelly were showing me, and then or telling me, and I was showing this information to members of the intelligence community and members of U.S. Customs and other branches of federal law enforcement who validated it for me. Thank you. I apologize to everybody that buys our book and reads it, because I tried to make my portion of it informative enough to where it wouldn't hurt you. And I told Kathy that she had to include enough detail in the book, such as the anatomical details of her alleged abusers, so that we could get them into court and make them drop their pants. That kind of leads me into the presenter for the second oldest profession, or first oldest profession. I'll get to that second reverse. Now, who was first? Well, I don't know. It's a long debate in the intelligence community whether prostitutes or spies came first and second. I don't know. Ladies first. Okay. That's a good one. At this point, I'd like to present Kathy O'Brien, the person who rescued my spirituality. Wasn't a bad guy, but I needed that extra push, and I'm mighty proud to have been with her for over 8 years now.